The Gulf of Guinea, one of the most strikingly important, ecologically rich, and geopolitically significant regions in the Atlantic Ocean. Stretching in a broad, concave curve along the western and central coast of Africa, it extends from the western shores of Côte d'Ivoire to the southern reaches of Nigeria and beyond. Its waters open into the vast Atlantic near the equator, forming a critical crossroads between Africa, Europe, the Americas, and global maritime trade routes. The term Guinea historically distinguished the West African coastal regions encountered by European explorers. Over centuries, these waters have witnessed early human settlement, flourishing pre-colonial civilizations, transatlantic trade, colonial expansion, and modern economic globalization. Today, the Gulf of Guinea is a dynamic hub of natural wealth, cultural diversity, economic opportunity, and complex environmental and security challenges. Geographically, the Gulf of Guinea is defined by its gently curving coastline, which touches multiple national boundaries and encompasses highly diverse coastal environments. Its continental shelf is relatively broad and shallow in many areas, providing fertile waters for marine life and supporting nutrient-rich upwellings. The gradual descent of the shelf into deeper waters contributes to productive fishing grounds and sustains vital oceanic currents. Warm Atlantic waters moderate the climate along the coast, ensuring tropical temperatures and supporting both terrestrial and marine ecosystems. Several major rivers flow into the Gulf, profoundly shaping its ecology and human settlements. The Niger River, one of Africa's largest, empties into the Gulf through the vast Niger Delta in southern Nigeria. This delta forms a complex network of distributaries, swamps, and mangroves, providing critical habitats for aquatic species while influencing coastal water chemistry. The Volta River, flowing from southeastern Ghana through the enormous Lake Volta, delivers essential nutrients to the coast, sustaining fisheries and supporting lagoon systems. Cameroon's Sanaga River flows into the Gulf near Douala, creating estuarine environments that enrich marine biodiversity, while Gabon's Ogooué River empties through a broad delta into the Atlantic, forming wetlands that host a variety of flora and fauna. The climate of the Gulf of Guinea is tropical, shaped by the surrounding land masses and warm ocean currents. Seasonal rainfall, influenced by the migration of the intertropical convergence zone, produces alternating wet and dry periods along the coast. Coastal waters are consistently warm, ranging from the mid-20s to high 20s Celsius, fostering year-round marine productivity. Mangrove forests, estuaries, lagoons, and wetlands thrive under these conditions, although the region faces increasing vulnerability to tropical storms, rising sea levels, and coastal erosion. Historically, the coastal regions of the Gulf of Guinea were inhabited by vibrant societies with sophisticated trade networks long before European contact. Inland trade connected gold-rich highlands and forested areas to the coast, enabling exchanges of gold, ivory, kola nuts, textiles, and spices. Kingdoms such as the Ashanti, Yu, and Yoruba established prosperous coastal settlements that became cultural and economic hubs. With the arrival of European powers in the late 15th century, including the Portuguese, Dutch, British, and French, the Gulf became a focal point of maritime exploration and trade. European ships sought gold, ivory, and other commodities, but the region also became a gateway to one of history's greatest tragedies, the transatlantic slave trade. Millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homelands and sold into slavery in the Americas, leaving a profound cultural and demographic legacy. Coastal forts and trading posts, such as Elmina Castle in present-day Ghana, became points of departure for countless enslaved individuals, leaving a historical imprint that resonates to this day. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, European colonial powers consolidated control over the coastal nations of the Gulf of Guinea. Borders were drawn, local governance structures were transformed, and natural resources were extracted to fuel European economies. Upon achieving independence in the mid-20th century, nations like Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, and Gabon inherited political boundaries and economic frameworks shaped by colonial legacies, which continue to influence governance, development, and regional relations. The Gulf of Guinea is a cornerstone of economic activity in West and Central Africa. Its ports serve as vital hubs for trade, linking African markets to Europe, the Americas, and Asia. Lagos and Port Harcourt in Nigeria are the country's primary economic centers, handling oil exports, industrial goods, and commercial cargo. In Ghana, the ports of Tema and Takoradi facilitate cocoa exports, petroleum trade, and containerized shipping, while Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire operates as one of West Africa's busiest ports. Douala in Cameroon functions as a gateway to Central Africa, and the ports of Lomé in Togo and Cotonou in Benin provide access for neighboring landlocked nations. Equatorial Guinea and Gabon rely on Port Gentil and Malabo as centers for oil export, cementing the Gulf of Guinea's position as a key link in global commerce. The region's oil and gas resources are among its most globally recognized features. Offshore reserves near Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon have driven decades of economic growth, foreign investment, and infrastructure development. Petroleum extraction has funded national budgets and development projects, while also attracting global attention to the Gulf of Guinea as a strategic energy hub. However, dependence on oil has created economic volatility and challenges associated with the resource curse, such as inequality, corruption, and underinvestment in human capital. Fisheries are another vital component of the Gulf's economy and sustenance systems. Artisanal fishing dominates coastal communities, employing traditional methods that have been passed down through generations. These fisheries provide protein and income for millions of people while sustaining cultural identities rooted in fishing traditions. Industrial fleets target high-value species, including tuna, mackerel, and sardines, generating revenue but also placing pressure on marine stocks. Overfishing and illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing have become growing concerns, threatening food security and long-term ecological balance. The Gulf of Guinea's ecological richness extends beyond its fisheries. Extensive mangrove forests line the coasts of Nigeria, Ghana, and Cameroon, protecting shorelines from erosion, acting as carbon sinks, filtering pollutants, and serving as nurseries for fish and crustaceans. Estuarine systems, where fresh water mixes with salt water, create highly productive zones that sustain fish breeding and support bird migrations. Lagoons along the Ghanaian and Ivorian coasts form critical hubs for artisanal fisheries and coastal communities. Coral reefs offshore in Gabon, Cameroon, and Equatorial Guinea harbor reef fish, mollusks, and invertebrates, while seagrass beds provide food and habitat for marine megafauna such as dugongs and sea turtles. Endangered marine species, including green, leatherback, and hawksbill turtles, frequent the Gulf's beaches for nesting, and manatees and dolphins inhabit the estuarine waters. Coastal wetlands also support migratory and resident birds such as herons, pelicans, terns, and flamingos, linking African ecosystems to global biodiversity networks. Despite its wealth of natural resources, the Gulf of Guinea faces serious maritime security challenges. In recent decades, piracy, armed robbery at sea, and kidnappings of crew members have surged, making the Gulf one of the most dangerous maritime regions in the world. Criminal networks exploit the region's complex river systems, estuaries, and mangroves, targeting cargo ships, oil tankers, and fishing vessels. The roots of piracy are multifaceted, including economic inequality, limited employment opportunities, weak law enforcement, corruption, and the adaptability of criminal networks. Efforts to address these security challenges have led to regional cooperation and international engagement. Organizations such as the Economic Community of West African States and the Economic Community of Central African States promote joint naval patrols, shared intelligence, and legal harmonization. The Gulf of Guinea Maritime Security Initiative strengthens collaboration, while international partners, including the European Union, the United States, and the United Nations, provide training, surveillance technology, and capacity-building support. Information fusion centers track maritime traffic and incidents in real time, but persistent jurisdictional gaps, limited resources, and adaptive criminal networks continue to pose challenges. Environmental threats compound the Gulf's difficulties. Oil spills from drilling, pipelines, and tanker operations damage mangroves, coral reefs, and fisheries, undermining livelihoods and ecosystem health. Deforestation, coastal urbanization, and industrial expansion further degrade wetlands, lagoons, and estuaries. Overfishing and illegal foreign fleets exacerbate pressure on fish stocks, while climate change leads to rising sea levels, coastal erosion, and extreme weather events that threaten communities and infrastructure. Pollution from agricultural runoff, industrial effluents, and untreated urban wastewater contributes to eutrophication, algal blooms, and hypoxic zones in coastal waters. In response, regional and international initiatives seek to protect the Gulf of Guinea's ecological integrity. Several countries have established marine protected areas to conserve coral reefs, mangroves, and fish habitats, while regional conventions encourage cooperation in pollution control, environmental monitoring, and sustainable resource management. Local communities participate in mangrove restoration, sustainable fishing, and ecotourism projects, integrating conservation with livelihoods. International organizations support these efforts with technical assistance, research, and policy guidance. Looking toward the future, the Gulf of Guinea presents immense opportunities for sustainable development. Renewable energy initiatives, including offshore wind and solar projects, can reduce dependence on oil and provide clean energy for growing populations. Science-based fisheries management and responsible aquaculture practices can ensure food security and protect biodiversity. The Gulf's historic ports, rich biodiversity, and coastal landscapes offer potential for ecotourism that blends heritage preservation with economic growth. Upgrading maritime infrastructure and enhancing port efficiency will strengthen the region's role in global trade while supporting economic diversification. The Gulf of Guinea's story is one of contrasts. It is rich in natural wealth yet vulnerable to environmental and security threats, culturally vibrant yet historically marked by exploitation, economically dynamic yet facing structural challenges. Its future depends on a delicate balance between development, conservation, and regional cooperation. Strengthening governance, fostering economic diversification, protecting biodiversity, and investing in human capital will be crucial to ensuring that the Gulf continues to serve as a vital, resilient, and prosperous region. Ultimately, the Gulf of Guinea embodies the intertwined fates of nature and human society. From the mangrove-lined estuaries of the Niger Delta to the bustling ports of Lagos, Accra, and Abidjan, from offshore coral reefs to the shipping lanes that connect continents, the Gulf stands as a testament to the potential of sustainable development and collaborative governance. Its history, ecology, economy, and culture converge to create a region of global significance. How the nations, communities, and individuals of the Gulf of Guinea respond to contemporary challenges will determine the region's trajectory for generations. By balancing prosperity, security, and environmental stewardship, the Gulf of Guinea can continue to be a cornerstone of African development and a beacon for sustainable maritime and coastal management worldwide. The Gulf of Guinea is a vast and dynamic expanse of the eastern tropical Atlantic Ocean that curves along the western and central coasts of Africa. Its waters touch numerous nations, form critical economic corridors, cradle intensely biodiverse ecosystems, and hold a history both profound and deeply human. From the earliest human settlements to modern ports bustling with maritime trade, the Gulf of Guinea stands as one of the most complex maritime regions in the world. It is a place where oceans, rivers, forests, cities, cultures, politics, and economies meet and intertwine. This narrative is a journey through that complexity, a story of natural wealth, human endeavor, adversity, and hope. The name Guinea itself holds echoes of centuries. Derived from early European explorers' designation of the West African coast, the term came to signify the rich coastal belt from Senegal to Gabon and beyond. The Gulf of Guinea refers to the maritime portion of this coastal region, where the Atlantic Ocean embraces Africa's land mass in a broad, irregular arc. It is a landscape shaped by water from the milky brown deltas of mighty rivers to the sun-kissed open ocean, from windswept mangrove forests to reefs teeming with life. Its shores have long supported human communities, and its waters have provided both nourishment and challenges. Geographically, the Gulf of Guinea's continental shelf forms a gentle rampart before plunging into the deep Atlantic. Fertile currents and nutrient flows from rivers such as the Niger, Volta, Sanaga, and Ogooué enrich its waters, fostering prolific marine life. Warm tropical temperatures and the rhythm of rainy and dry seasons driven by shifting atmospheric systems shape the coast. The climate here is not uniform but instead a tapestry of microclimates: humid equatorial belts, monsoonal rainforests, and coastal savannas, all contributing to diverse ecosystems both on land and at sea. The Niger River, among the continent's longest, is perhaps the most defining river system for the Gulf. Flowing from the highlands of West Africa, it splits into a vast delta in southern Nigeria, spilling millions of cubic meters of fresh water and sediment into the Gulf daily. This delta is one of the largest wetland complexes on Earth, characterized by labyrinthine waterways, mudflats, abundant mangroves, and a mosaic of swamps and estuaries. The Volta River, dammed to form Lake Volta, one of the world's biggest artificial lakes, brings additional nutrient flows that enrich Ghana's coastal fisheries and lagoon systems. Rivers like Cameroon's Sanaga and Gabon's Ogooué similarly shape their coastal landscapes, creating fish nurseries, forested wetlands, and ecological corridors that link terrestrial and marine life. The ecological richness of the Gulf of Guinea cannot be overstated. Its mangrove forests, stretching along the coasts of Nigeria, Ghana, and Cameroon, serve purposes far beyond what initial sight might suggest. These tangled networks of salt-tolerant trees act as natural bulwarks against coastal erosion and storm surges, act as carbon sinks that help regulate global climate, filter pollutants from water, and provide spawning and nursery grounds for countless fish and crustacean species. These forests support communities that rely on wood for fuel and materials and form the backdrop for traditions and livelihoods passed through generations. Beyond mangroves, the Gulf of Guinea's waters cradle seagrass beds that feed endangered marine mammals like dugongs and loggerhead turtles. Coral reefs, particularly off the coasts of Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, and Cameroon, host reef fish and invertebrates, adding to a web of life that extends from microscopic plankton to migratory whales. Estuarine systems, where river waters blend with saline tides, are some of the most productive biological zones on the planet. Bird life flourishes in these coastal wetlands, hosting species that migrate from the Arctic to Africa, linking continents through ancient patterns of movement. Human engagement with these environments is profound and ancient. Long before European ships appeared on the horizon, sophisticated societies flourished along the Gulf's coast and inland. Inland gold fields and tropical forests connected to the sea via trade routes that moved gold, ivory, textiles, and kola nuts. Societies like the Akan of present-day Ghana developed complex political systems and material cultures, trading with one another and with far-off communities. Ports emerged as cultural crossroads where languages, beliefs, and goods flowed freely. The arrival of Europeans in the 15th century brought new dynamics. Portuguese sailors, charting unknown waters, brought with them demands for gold, spices, and new trade routes. Over time, ships from the Netherlands, Britain, France, and other powers frequented the coast. Yet it was the transatlantic slave trade that most radically altered human history here. Millions of Africans captured in brutal raids and wars were marched to coastal forts and shipped into bondage across the ocean. The human toll was staggering, and the consequences unimaginable. Entire societies were depopulated, cultural continuity disrupted, and social structures fracturing under the weight of forced removal. The legacy of the slave trade endures in diasporic communities across the Americas and shapes global understandings of human rights and historical justice. The fortifications and trading posts that once anchored this trade remain as silent sentinels today. Structures like Elmina Castle in Ghana and others along the coast remind visitors of a time when human life was commodified and oceanic pathways were transformed into conduits of suffering. Yet they also represent resilient sites of memory and education that now anchor discussions on restitution, reconciliation, and shared histories. European colonialism reshaped the political boundaries and economies of Gulf of Guinea nations in the 19th and early 20th centuries. European powers partitioned lands, reorganized societies under centralized administrations, extracted resources for export, built railways and ports, all within the context of colonial rule. Ports that had once facilitated regional exchange were repurposed for export of raw materials, cocoa, timber, palm oil, minerals, and later, petroleum. Independence movements of the mid-20th century succeeded in liberating these nations, but the political and economic legacies of colonialism remained inscribed in national borders, official languages, and economic structures heavily oriented toward external markets. The post-independence era opened new chapters for the Gulf of Guinea. Nations embarked on ambitious development goals, seeking to modernize infrastructure, expand education, improve health outcomes, and industrialize economies. In many cases, central roles were played by the exploitation of natural resources, especially oil and gas. Offshore petroleum reserves, particularly in Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon, attracted international investment and transformed national budgets. Oil revenues funded major projects and provided soft power in international arenas. Yet reliance on hydrocarbons also introduced what economists and sociologists call the resource curse, volatile economic growth tied to fluctuations in global oil prices, governance challenges, corruption, and uneven distribution of wealth. In some communities, nearby oil facilities brought little benefit, instead producing environmental contamination and social tension. Despite these challenges, the region's ports and economic corridors grew in significance. Lagos, teeming and sprawling, became not only Nigeria's commercial heart but one of Africa's economic powerhouses. Its ports handle massive volumes of goods, linking West Africa to Europe, Asia, and the Americas. In Ghana, Tema and Takoradi became modern gateways for container shipping, exports of cocoa still a cornerstone of Ghana's economy, and imports of manufactured goods. Abidjan, with its deep water harbor, emerged as a leading regional hub for West African trade. Douala on Cameroon's coast supports both mineral and agricultural exports and serves as a transit point for goods moving inland to Chad and even Central African Republic. Beyond extractive industries and port activity, agriculture and manufacturing contribute to the socio-economic profile of the Gulf of Guinea. Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana rank among the world's largest cocoa producers, shaping global chocolate supply chains. Timber from Cameroonian and Gabonese forests feeds furniture and construction markets, while palm oil and rubber production support both local economies and export revenues. Inland from the coast, farmers cultivate a diversity of crops, feeding burgeoning urban populations even as they navigate market pressures and climate variability. Alongside these economic pursuits, the lives of ordinary people unfold daily in villages, towns, and cities bordering the Gulf. In fishing communities from the Niger Delta to Ghana's Volta estuary, traditional knowledge of tides, seasons, and fish behavior is passed down through generations. Fishing is not merely economic but cultural. Ceremonies, festivals, and social structures often reflect the rhythms of the sea. Similarly, marketplaces along the coast bustle with activity, sellers trading fish, spices, textiles, and handcrafted goods, whispering deals in multiple languages woven into the region's linguistic tapestry. Yet the Gulf of Guinea is also a space of dangers that extend beyond the physical risks of the sea. Maritime security has emerged as a global concern, with piracy, armed robbery at sea, and crew kidnappings drawing international attention. Vessels navigating territorial waters can face threats from criminal syndicates that thrive in areas where governance is challenged by limited resources, corruption, and vast coastal expanses that are difficult to patrol. Attacks on cargo ships, oil tankers, and fishing vessels disrupt commerce, raise insurance costs, and threaten the livelihoods of coastal populations who depend on safe seas for fishing and trade. The roots of maritime crime are entangled with socio-economic disparities, lack of opportunity, and the persistence of uneven development across coastal regions. In response, local governments and regional organizations have increased collaboration on naval patrols, information sharing, and coordinated responses. Initiatives such as the Gulf of Guinea Maritime Security Initiative and cooperation frameworks between the Economic Community of West African States and the Economic Community of Central African States support multilateral action. International partners, including the European Union, the United States, and United Nations agencies, provide training, technology, and support for marine surveillance. These efforts have curbed some threats, but persistent gaps in enforcement capacity, resources, and legal harmonization continue to pose challenges. Environmental threats further complicate the Gulf's outlook. Oil pollution from drilling platforms, laden pipelines, and accidental spills degrade mangrove forests, sicken fish stocks, and contaminate shorelines. Urban expansion and industrial growth contribute to habitat loss, while agricultural runoff and untreated wastewater promote algal blooms that lead to oxygen-depleted zones in coastal waters. Climate change, a global threat manifesting locally, brings rising sea levels, more intense storm systems, and shifting rainfall patterns that threaten communities, farms, and infrastructure. Despite these pressures, efforts to protect and restore the Gulf of Guinea's ecosystems are multiplying. Marine protected zones designate reefs, estuaries, and mangrove tracts for conservation. Community-based initiatives mobilize local knowledge to replant mangroves, regulate fishing practices, and promote sustainable harvesting. International environmental organizations partner with governments and local civil society to build monitoring systems, enforce pollution standards, and conduct scientific research that informs policy. These endeavors represent an important shift from viewing the Gulf solely as a resource to be exploited toward recognizing it as a fragile, interdependent set of ecosystems upon which millions of lives depend. Looking toward the future, the Gulf of Guinea holds both promise and risk. Energy transitions present opportunities to diversify economies beyond hydrocarbons. Wind turbines off the coast, solar farms inland, and investments in renewable energy infrastructure could reduce dependence on fossil fuels while creating new industries and jobs. Scientific management of fisheries and the development of sustainable aquaculture might bolster food security while protecting marine biodiversity. Ecotourism promises to transform natural and cultural heritage sites into sources of income without degrading them. In port cities, modernization of infrastructure and logistical innovation could strengthen trade competitiveness, enhance connectivity, and attract investment. Realizing this potential requires addressing deep structural issues. Strengthening governance and public institutions to manage resources transparently and equitably is key. Empowering communities through education, healthcare, and access to opportunities will reduce vulnerabilities that fuel crime and instability. Investing in resilient infrastructure can help communities adapt to climate change while protecting natural environments. And fostering regional cooperation among governments, civil society, and economic actors anchors solutions in shared interests rather than fragmented initiatives. The Gulf of Guinea's narrative is ultimately a human story of resilience, adaptation, and ingenuity. Its waters and shores have borne witness to centuries of change, from early coastal kingdoms to transatlantic upheavals, colonial rule to post-independence aspirations, and environmental pressures to new frontiers of sustainability. This region's future will be written by people, those who fish in its waters, build businesses along its ports, study its ecosystems, govern its states, and connect its traditions with global currents. In all its complexity, the Gulf of Guinea stands as a testament to the interconnectedness of people and nature, of history and future, of local lives and global systems. Its ecosystems and economies, cultures and communities, challenges and opportunities are interwoven into a tapestry that is at once distinctive and universal. How this region navigates the coming decades, balancing development with conservation, security with freedom, tradition with innovation, will be among the defining stories of the 21st century. Thank you for watching this video.